folks, if you are sitting comfortably and all settled in, we will continue with our reading of The Hobbit. So how these sessions go is that it's around half an hour of reading, although if we're getting to a very exciting bit, I might try and negotiate for us reading a few more minutes. And then we are able to have an open discussion on the themes, the imagery that's come up in that section. So we are in chapter 4 at the moment, Overhill and Underhill. We are nearly close to the end of that. So they are in with the goblins under the misty mountains. And we'll continue the story. Let me find. We'll just go back a little bit so you get an idea. And the current companions are talking with the great goblin and his assembled horde. "Murderers and elf friends," the great goblin shouted. "Slash them, beat them, bite them, gnash them, take them away to dark holes full of snakes, and never let them see the light again." He was in such a rage that he jumped off his seat and himself rushed at Thorin with his mouth open. Just at that moment, all the lights in the cavern went out, and the great fire went off, poof, into a tower of blue glowing smoke right up to the roof that scattered piercing white sparks all among the goblins. The yells and yammering, croaking, gibbering and jabbering, howls, growls and curses, shrieking and shrieking that followed were beyond description. Several hundred wild cats and wolves being roasted slowly alive together would not have compared to it. The sparks were burning holes in the goblins, and the smoke that now fell from the roof made the air too thick for even their eyes to see through. Soon they were falling over one another and rolling in heaps on the floor, biting and kicking and fighting as if they had all gone mad. Suddenly a sword flashed in its own light. Bilbo saw it go right through the great goblin as he stood dumbfounded in the middle of his rage. He fell dead, and the goblin soldiers fled before the sword, shrieking into the darkness. The sword went back into its sheath. "Follow me quick," said a voice, fierce and quiet, and before Bilbo understood what had happened, he was trotting along again, as fast as he could trot. At the end of the line, down more dark passages with the yells of the goblin hall growing fainter behind him. A pale light was leading them on. "Quicker, quicker," said the voice. "The torches will soon be relit." "Half a minute," said Dory, who was at the back next to Bilbo, and a decent fellow. He made the hobbit scramble on his shoulders as best he could with his tied hands, and then off they went at a run, with a clink-chink of chains and many a stumble, since they had no hands to steady themselves with. Not for a long while did they stop, and by that time they must have been right down in the very mountain's heart. Then Gandalf lit up his wand. Of course it was Gandalf. But just then they were too busy to ask how he got there. He took out his sword again, and again it flashed in the dark by itself. It burned with a rage that made it gleam as if goblins were about. Now it was bright as blue flame for delight in the killing of the great lord of the cave. It made no trouble whatsoever of cutting through the goblin chains and setting all the prisoners free as quickly as possible. This sword's name was Glamdring the Foe Hammer, if you remember. The goblins just called it Beater and hated it worse than Biter, if possible. Orcrist, too, had been saved, for Gandalf had brought it along as well as snatching it from one of the terrified guards. Gandalf thought of most things, and though he could not do everything, he could do a great deal for friends in a tight corner. "Are we all here?" he said, handing his sword back to Thorin with a bow. "Let me see. 1, that's Thorin. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Where are Feely and Keely? Ah, here they are. 12, 13, and here's Mr. Baggins, 14. Well, well. It might be worse, and then again it might be a good deal better." No ponies, and no food, and no knowing quite where we are, and hordes of angry goblins just behind. On we go. On they went. Gandalf was quite right. They began to hear goblin noises and horrible cries far behind in the passages they had come through. That sent them on faster than ever, and as poor Bilbo could not possibly go half as fast, for dwarves can roll along at a tremendous pace, I can tell you, when they have to. They took it in turns to carry him on their backs. Still, goblins go faster than dwarves. This time he did not go back to the boat. He sat down in the dark by Bilbo, and that made the hobbit most dreadfully uncomfortable and scattered his wits. I'm going to stop there just before that last fateful question in the riddling competition. So you are very welcome now to put mics on if you would like to come and join the discussion. So we have gone from the goblin caves. Bilbo has got separated off and is now having a riddle competition in the dark with a very certain Gollum. So folks, what did you think to this particular part of the story? What kind of things does it bring out for you? What kind of resonances? And I'm fairly sure most folks here will have seen the films. So how does the book differ from the film interpretation that we have from The Joys of Peter Jackson?
The film does not go quite as in depth as that, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good anxiety, which is really weird for somebody to say that this creates like a good anxiety, but it's a good anxiety because I have seen the films, I've read the books, and I know that, you know, hey, he's okay in the end, but it's like a ooh, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
I am terrible at